Hey, thanks so much for finding the video. Do us a favor. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe. And be sure to leave your comment. We love to interact. Enjoy the video. It is widely assumed now that Drew Brees is going to retire and the Saints are going to be in the market for a quarterback. And the possibilities are really very interesting because it's a year where so many veteran quarterbacks have uncertain futures. After the NFC Championship game on Sunday, when Tom Brady and the Bucs beat Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, Aaron Rodgers very much sounded like a defeated man. And he was, in a very literal sense. They had lost. He was defeated. So I don't want to make too much out of what Rodgers was saying immediately post-game when the wound is still fresh and there's blood and ooze pouring out of it. But it's hard to ignore when he says this.
There's a lot of guys' futures that are, uncertain, myself included. That's what's sad about it most. Getting this far, obviously there's going to be an end to it at some point, whether we make it past this one or not. But just the uncertainty is tough, and the finality of it all.
Again, minutes after losing another NFC Championship game. For Rodgers, he becomes the first quarterback to lose 4 straight NFC Championship games. And that was the first one he had had at home. So, I get it. He's 37. How many more chances you can have? I understand the emotion there. So I'm not trying to overanalyze it. But the reason it comes into question about Rodgers is because of this. Florio at Pro Football Talk, after the NFC Championship game, tweeted top potential Aaron Rodgers destinations in 2021. 49ers, Patriots, Steelers, Raiders, Colts, Saints. So you know what the Who Dat Nation is going to do when they see that. They're going to do what every fan base does this time of year. When it is so super fun to fantasize about your favorite team getting every single free agent, even when you're $100 million over the cap. Make it work! Just make it work! It is worth noting that Matt LaFleur, after the game, was emphatic about Aaron Rodgers returning to Green Bay next season. He's 37. Yes, you drafted Jordan Love a year ago, but he's going to win the MVP this year. He had 40 touchdown passes and 5 interceptions. You're not letting the reigning MVP get away. But if you're New Orleans and you realize that you need to look beyond Drew Brees this year, it is a very advantageous year to be in the market for a quarterback because there is a very full crop of talented, competent, and potentially even championship-level quarterbacks that are available. I mean, the list is long. When you look at guys like Dak Prescott, who could well be a free agent, and people are talking about Deshaun Watson with a trade, and is Aaron Rodgers available? And we know Matt Stafford's not going to be back in Detroit. And then you're looking at guys like Garoppolo and Darnold and Cam and Trubisky and Fitzpatrick and Tyrod Taylor. I mean, there are starting quarterbacks aplenty available this year. And we haven't even talked about Jameis or Taysom Hill yet. Taysom, who's under contract, Jameis, who's a free agent. So I wanted to kind of just go through this for a second. And I know this is not a conversation that's going to end today or tomorrow or a week from now or likely even a month from now. This is a conversation that's going to go on until free agency, and likely through the draft, and then possibly even beyond that, depending on what trades may come about after the draft. Let's look at a couple of these, okay? Let's start with Dak Prescott. If you want to talk about Dak Prescott, that's a pipe dream. Dak Prescott signed a franchise tender a year ago with Dallas at $31.4 million. So if you're Dak Prescott, or if you're Jerry Jones right now, and you sign Prescott to a $31.4 million franchise tender, and then he gets hurt, and your whole organization goes kablooey, you don't have an option but to bring Dak Prescott back next year. And even if you didn't, the Saints aren't in a position financially where they're going to be able to be competitive enough to be in the market for Dak Prescott. So as much as you may love the possibility, and as much as I'm seeing the memes with Dak in a Saints uniform and all that stuff, and as cool as that would be, it is a less than 10% probability that you could get Dak Prescott to New Orleans. Deshaun Watson. There's a lot of people obviously talking about Deshaun Watson and the possibility of the Saints trading for him. And I would be very clear, if the situation arose where the Saints could bring Deshaun Watson to New Orleans, that is an absolute 100%, without a question, no-brainer. You have an elite quarterback in his physical prime, at the beginning of his physical prime, that would be your franchise for the next decade plus. Not even a question if you could get Deshaun Watson. Here's the problem. The Texans have Deshaun Watson under contract. So if they trade him, they're going to be looking to trade their franchise quarterback for a franchise quarterback. So I keep hearing people say, well, give him Mike Thomas and a bunch of first-round picks. They don't want Mike Thomas and your 28th overall pick. They want either a franchise quarterback or a pick that would net them a franchise quarterback. If Jacksonville calls and says, hey, we'll give you the number 1 overall pick and next year's one for Deshaun Watson, great. Now Houston gets Trevor Lawrence and the first-round pick next year of Jacksonville and their first-round pick as well, because they're not going to be any good. You could call Miami. We'll give you Tua and whatever else for Deshaun. Now, the Texans have their franchise. I don't know that they necessarily believe in Sam Darnold, but could you get Darnold and the Jets won the second overall pick to bring in Justin Fields, or maybe you trade Darnold? My point is, there are other franchises that could make far more attractive offers to Houston than New Orleans could even dream of making. So you've got to scratch off Deshaun Watson because it's not going to happen. You don't have the capital to make that deal. So then you go into the next crop of young veterans who could be available. Jimmy Garoppolo, Sam Darnold, Mitchell Trubisky. Meh. I know Garoppolo's been to a Super Bowl. I'm not trying to discount that, but they also had one of the best defenses in the NFL, and I don't think that that's a guy that many people are thinking, yep, he's my franchise. Then you have old guys that are kind of meh, like Cam and Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tyrod Taylor. None of those are guys that you want to hitch your wagon to and say they're taking us to a Super Bowl. So it brings you back to the options we just talked about. Aaron Rodgers. If Rodgers is available, great. But Aaron Rodgers has one more year remaining on his contract, guaranteed at $37.5 million. Theoretically, if you're New Orleans and you traded for Rodgers, you could void that deal, restructure and sign him to a long-term deal that's team-friendly early and cap-heavy late. That's a possibility that you could do if Green Bay was willing to trade Aaron Rodgers. But again, listening to Matt LaFleur on Sunday, it sure as heck doesn't sound like Green Bay has any interest in trading a guy who's going to win the MVP this year. I know they drafted Jordan Love, but that's not a team that's ready for a rebuild. That's a team that was 7 yards away, potentially, from going to the Super Bowl. So really what it comes down to is, do you believe in Jameis Winston, or do you make a play for Matt Stafford? And if the answer is neither, then do you get your future in the draft? The problem with that is when you're picking in the late 20s, who's going to be there? Like, are you convinced Mac Jones or Kyle Trask is that guy? Because I'm not. And this is a year where there's going to be no combine and no in-person workouts. Are you really good with drafting your franchise, your future, without having the opportunity to work him out in person or evaluate him at the combine? Because I'm not. So for me, if I'm taking a quarterback, it ain't going to be late in round one. It's going to be one of the can't miss guys, air quotes, with Lawrence or Fields or whoever you think is there at the top. Which brings you back then to Jameis or Matt Stafford. Which do you want? Do you want the 26-year-old in his physical prime, who's been a starter for 5 years in this league, was in your system for a year, who's learned under Sean Payton, who's learned under Drew Brees, who humbled himself, who got in the best shape of his life, had LASIK done, who's had a year to learn and watch, great team guy, understands your culture? You want that guy? Or do you want to make a play for Matt Stafford at 32 years old, who for most of his career has been very durable, but in 2019 missed half the season due to injury? Do you want to sign the trade for the 32-year-old and have him for another maybe 5 years with your core in place, thinking you might be able to go? Or bank on the 26-year-old, both guys that were number one picks, both guys with big arms, both have been starters, both have had some success, but met with some failure as well. Neither has won at the biggest level yet. Which way do you go? For me, it's easy. It's Jameis Winston. He's the answer. He's the answer that I gave you last year after the draft. And a lot of you laughed at me, or before the draft, actually. A lot of you laughed at me. Hell, we had Island Hanny during our draft watch party yelling about Josh Rosen being free when I was saying Jameis Winston. It makes too much sense. If you can convince him to re-sign, and if you're convinced he can be your franchise, that's the direction I go. Because I don't know that there is a definitively better option that is realistic today. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.